Hi Kitties, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here and you don't know me, hi, I'm Kirti. I am a final year med student and I'm glad that this video has found you and also this page has found you. I hope you stay connected throughout the video and watch it until the end, because on today's video I'm gonna recommend you some really good books that you must read, and these books are belonging to different genre. So without any delay, let's get into the video. First, I'll go with two of my favorite self-help books, which I feel that they have been most helpful at this point in my life. The first one is How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the next one is The Atomic Habits. These two books are not just books but pure workbooks for me. They helped me in transforming into a different person and also helped me in building my personality. To build new habits and make sure that I make them a part of my life, this Atomic Habits has helped me with that. And in order to know and understand people's perspectives, people's thoughts, and if I want certain things to be happening in my life, how should things go in order to let that happen, is what How to Win Friends and Influence People has helped me with. Now, these two books are a 5 out of 5 and they are a must read, at least in this 2025 or at least in your whole life, and they are definitely gonna change your perspectives on certain aspects of life. If you who are watching this video feel like I am an introverted person, I am too reserved, but I want to be successful in my life, I want things to happen in the certain way that I see them to be happening, then definitely give this a read, and I'm sure that it's gonna 100% help you with whatever you're dealing with. The next book that I'll go with is A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. I hope I'm spelling it in the right way. Now, this is a very well written, powerful story of family, friendship, and hope, which is woven around 30 years of Afghan history that has had a huge impact on the people who were living there. I think it still does. The story revolves around Laila, Maryam, and Rashid. Maryam is an illegitimate child of a wealthy man who grows up with her mother in a kolba, which is like a cement based hut, but it is having the poorest conditions of a house in which a person can live in. And she got to visit her father only once in a week, but she used to await for that one day the whole week. She used to enjoy that day thoroughly. Her father used to visit her, give her presents, and used to read her literature or any poetry, but she was not satisfied with that. She wanted to live with her father. Amidst the warnings given by her mother to not visit him, she visits her father's place and comes back with a disappointment that her father is not the same kind of person that she imagines or she thinks him to be. But a tragedy awaits her as she returns to her place with her mother hanging herself to the tree, as a result of which her father decides to take her to her place. But the wives of her father, they decide her to get married so that she doesn't live with them, and they marry her off to Rashid, who is in his 50s to 60s, and he resides in Kabul, a far enough place so that Maryam could never return to her father's place. And this marriage eventually turns into a misery and brutality because of the abusive nature of Rashid towards Maryam. 20 years later, the story starts revolving around Laila, who is having a father almost the same age of Rashid and lives in the same neighborhood as they do, and she gets orphaned because of her losing her brothers, her mother, and her father, basically her whole family, including her love, to the attacks that happen in that area. And she had to get married to Rashid when she was 18 years old. In that unhappy household grows a beautiful friendship between Maryam and Laila, and that is similar to any relationship between a mother and daughter. Amidst the abusive nature of Rashid towards both Laila and Maryam, the friendship between them tends to grow much more closer as the days go forward. In the last scenes of this book, you will get to know how they escape from this abusive household and how these attacks that were happening would impact them and how they are gonna affect them. But a disclaimer to you guys, it's gonna end on an emotional note. Now, about my feeling towards the book, the only thing that I was left as I finished the book was gratitude. I understood how privileged I was to be sleeping peacefully at night, to be studying what I wanted, to be not in a abusive household where you were treated like a trash. The next book that I'm gonna talk about is Days at the Morisaki bookshop. I highly recommend this book for beginners because it's just few pages and you can easily finish it off in a week. If I had to explain about this book in just 3 words, I'd choose warmth, comfort, and lightheartedness. You can easily read and finish it and enjoy thoroughly the story. It has a straightforward storyline and features simple language. Now, the story revolves around Takako, Momoko, and Satoru. In the first half, we get to see the bond that's between Takako and Satoru Morisaki. So, Satoru is the owner of the Morisaki bookshop, which is in Jimbocho, a town in Japan, and Takako, she gets cheated on, and who was already a reserved person turns even more taciturn, and Takako one day visits her uncle and the bookshop by the force of her mother, but it was for her own good. And she initially gets annoyed by the hyperactiveness of Satoru, the way he used to get at her for reading books. You need to read that, you need to read this. He used to be very hyperactive in terms of that. Later one day, she was left in the bookshop and she reads a book and starts reading more and more. Basically, she gets addicted to reading books eventually, and she tries to get back to her normal self. The whole bond that Satoru and Takako share is very well written in the first half. In the second half, we see Satoru and Momoko's bond. Momoko is the wife of Satoru and she leaves him after 20 years or so of her marriage, and she revisits Satoru. Now, what's the reason for her revisit and why did she leave him in the first place is what you get to know in the second half of the book. And I have also read the part 2 of this book, that is More Days at Morisaki Bookshop. Now, I'll also give a quick review about that. So, this book begins on a happy note. Momoko and Satoru, they start looking after the bookshop together. Takako starts her new life in a new office and also gets into a new relationship with a person called as Wada. As everything seems to be going great, just like an iceberg hits the Titanic, a shocking news also hits Takako and Satoru after a trip. And that's gonna leave a huge mark, a huge impact on these two people's life. Now, what's that is what you get to know by reading this book. It is a very well written story. This book shares similarity of being warm, comforting, and lighthearted with the part 1, but the only difference is that the part 1 it ends on a happy note, whereas this ends on an emotional note. I really love the ideology of the book that revolves around emotions and acceptance of things in life. Well, I can recommend this book to you if you are looking for a short story that can be finished on a weekend and that's also warm and comforting. If you're looking for this kind of book, then you can read both the part 1 and part 2, but part 1 if you are preferring some happy ending, and part 2 if you can also deal and manage with the sad endings. Overall, I'll give them a 5 out of 5. The next book that I chose is Book Lovers. I feel that this book doesn't get the hype that it deserves. This is a very good rom-com written by Emily Henry, but this is not your usual rom-com. It's a pure, mature, adult romance and a very deeply written story which is revolving around Nora, Charlie, and Libby. Let's talk about the plot. So, Nora is a New Yorker and she feels that New York is her safe place to the extent that she believes beyond New York, beyond this boundary, she cannot imagine her to be living a life. Libby, on the other hand, the younger sister of Nora, gets married earlier than Libby to the love of her life, Brendan, and she is a mother of 2 children. Libby and Nora share an amazing bond over being book lovers. Nora works as an agent for the person who writes this book called as Once Upon a Lifetime, which is set in Sunshine Falls, and Libby reads that book and is a great fan of that book, and she wants to visit that place, the Sunshine Falls, along with her sisters to retrieve that old bond that they used to share when they were young. So the sisters visit that place, they get into the town and they meet Charlie Lastra, who is also a book lover and is an editor. Things happen in a certain way that Nora and Charlie, they had to work for the same person who writes the story Once Upon a Lifetime. Nora, although felt initially that Charlie is a very narcissistic and headstrong person, she starts developing feelings towards him, and Charlie at the same time, though he had the same feelings towards her, starts reciprocating the newly developed feelings. But the thing is that for Nora to be in a relationship is a complicated thing, because the past relationships have made her feel that she is the woman on whom men cheat and get married to settle down. So what is going to happen with their love life, and Is she gonna have a happy ending to her love life? Will she leave New York? Because Charlie has to live now in the Sunshine Falls, even though he was living in the New York because of certain things that happen in his life because of his family. Now, how is things gonna work out between them is what you get to know in the book. The thing I loved the most about this book is that you don't find these cringy, lovey-dovey lines that you usually find in a rom-com, but a pure, mature conversation that occurs between two adults. I loved that a lot, and that's what makes this book stand out. The last book that I'm gonna recommend you, if you want to have a good thriller read where you don't want to put the book down, this book by Colin Hoover, Verity, is what you should be reading. So the story of this book, it revolves around Lowen, Jeremy and Verity. Lowen is a struggling writer who is currently at a financial crisis, and she gets an offer by Jeremy Crawford which will solve her whole financial problems. This offer was made for finishing the unfinished writings by Verity, who gets sick and is basically in a coma like situation where she cannot finish whatever she had to write and publish the book by the deadline. Lowen accepts the offer. She visits Crawford home and she starts searching through the notes and outlines made by Verity so that she can get started on. Lowen doesn't know what awaits in the form of an unfinished autobiography by Verity, which is filled with bone-chilling admissions and descriptions about an incident that has changed the Crawford family's life forever. Initially, Lowen decides to hide that manuscript from Jeremy, who devotes Verity, but as she starts developing feelings towards Jeremy, she decides that she can benefit from this manuscript and she wants him to read it. Will he read it? What's in that manuscript? What's the admissions and what's the confessions that Verity made that could be bone chilling is what you're gonna know by reading this book. The climax twist is like, I swear, when I finished the book, there was a lot going in my mind because of the climax. This is probably the only Colin Hoover book that I'll be voting for. Also, really excited that this book is being made into a movie, and the castings also perfect. And here we go with the end of the video. I hope that you'll be reading these recommended books by me, and I'm gonna start uploading this new book content on shorts and also in the form of long format videos. So subscribe to the channel and also hit that bell so that you get updated whenever I post content. Have a good read. Lots of love. Bye bye.